when it comes to your art journal, there's no right or wrong size, style, none of that. Hey guys, May Flum here, and I'm starting work on this. This is a square journal from Dilutions. I like the Dilutions journals. They're a nice hardy book with nice paper inside, and as you can see, some of my pages have a lot of space because I intend to add journaling, notes, thoughts, that kind of thing later. Some of them are very full with random creative experiments. I don't put judgment on myself in the art journal, as far as, you know, sometimes, and this got all yucked up sadly, but sometimes I have a full idea that I express, like a full page, like you might think of as a finished art journal page, and sometimes I'm just experimenting, sometimes I'm just testing and trying things. And there's no right or wrong. I just fill the pages. I fill the pages up as we go, and I play. And I can sometimes will go back and try things on pages that have a little something on them. There's no right or wrong, and that's what I love about art journals. There's no judgment. There's no rules. You can do anything you want. So when it comes to the cover, I've got two different schools of thought. The first is I don't bother with it. I just leave it as it is, let it get paint and yucky stuff on it, as it definitely will. There's the back side. The other thought is do a little something. Why not? So I've got this Prima stencil, and I have some Ranger texture paste, but any type of paste, modeling, molding, whatever, any of that would do. I'm going to put some paste on this floral stencil because I want to build some texture, and this is a nice book cover. It's a nice flat craft material that everything sticks well to, but because it is craft colored, it's a little darker in color, and some of the color mediums that I might want to use on here may not look quite as bright. So because of that, you may notice I'm really scraping the stencil, and you can clearly see it since it's a gray stencil, that I'm really removing a lot off of the stencil. And then I'm going to come down here, and the texture paste is fairly dry. And what I mean by that, it's not a super, oh, I'm sorry, there's just not a better word, moist medium. It's not something where you're not going to have to worry about a lot of wet, runny paint type consistency. It's really more like a spackle, really. Like, I think of it as filling the nail holes in the wall. It's a lot more spackle-like. So what that means for us is it's really easy to stencil with. It works really beautifully on all your stencils. It should, honestly, you should be able to do this kind of a thing with pretty much any of the paste type mediums. The only thing you want to be careful of here is make sure when you're at the edges that you don't go off the edge. If you do though, just take your finger, like right here I've got a oops, just rub it off. No big deal. I am going to put a little more over here. And if you don't get it perfect on this, it's not going to matter. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to let this dry all the way. I'm going to wash my stencil off. Once it's totally dry, I'm going to put a thin layer, and not a solid layer, but just a little light wash of gesso over it. The gesso over it is going to make it so that it's going to prime that surface so that my color mediums, number one, don't soak into the paper of the cover, making me have to use even more. And number two, what priming that surface is going to do is it's going to help me have a brighter white surface to start with. As you can see, I have a very thin wash of gesso here covering the book, and really, like I said before, the purpose of it is just to give me a little bit of a lighter surface, not necessarily completely cover. And as for the rubber band here, guys, I'm not going to worry about it. Got a little bit on it. This is a working art journal. This is not a for show, for publication. Let me see if I can go in the Art Journal Hall of Fame kind of art journal. No. Thoughts, feelings, experiments, play, fun. So I'm going to take some Prima oil pastels, and I'm lightly going over areas that have flowers. I'm not going over any other areas right now. This is just an initial color check, color test, if you will. And I'm not even gonna hit all the flowers. I'm just gonna go like you see me doing here. Doesn't have to take a long time. I'm just pulling out different purples and pinks. These are Prima oil pastels. You do not need oil pastels. You could work with, anything you like. Distress crayons, gelatos. You could be doing this with actual watercolor mediums. You could be rubbing ink pads on here, distress ink pads. Basically, you get the picture. Do what works. Use what you've got. I'm a huge fan of using what you have and playing with what works for you. You've got options. Me, I like to squirt it with some water first before I get out my brush. Now the reason I like to do that is that just kind of gets it going. Okay, so then I can come in here with my water brush or regular paintbrush, either way, and spread it around. The problem with doing it that way, and you can see here, come on in here real close, and you'll see the problem with doing that is sometimes, not always, but sometimes doing it that way has kind of a tendency to make it look a little like you were trying too hard. So squirting the water on, you're gonna get blending and maybe just a little with your finger to like really spread and activate it. You don't want it to look like you were trying. At least I don't, not on this one. I'm not going for I was trying to get this just so in this certain way. All kinds of fun stuff. So just keep repeating and playing with this with whatever mediums you've got. Like I said before, you could be coming in here with ink pads. If you want it to really stick, you could come in with like an here's a pink archival ink pad. It's magenta. So if I come in here with this, it's really going to stick. Okay, and because I used the paste the way I did, my flowers are going to really stand out no matter what else I do. More of the other mediums are going to more stick to like the background areas. If I then let this dry, first of all, you know, hit the ink so that the archival ink sets, but once it sets those water reactive mediums, it's not going to react with them. So we'll get different effects. So just keep, you know, just keep at it, keep playing, see what happens. So I had a little paint on my paper towel from a different project. And what I did was just kind of roll it over, and you get that great paper towel texture in there, as well as just little bits of paint. And you know what? I'm not going to add anything else, but I do want to add some finishing touch color. And what I'm going to try here, and I say try because I've not actually done this before, and I think it's going to work, but I'm not totally sure. I'm going to squeeze a whole lot of PPA all over my project. PPA is perfect paper adhesive. It is archival. It dries completely invisible and matte finish. It's the best, okay? Whether you are doing collage work, if you are doing like gluing chunky items to something, no matter what you're doing, you're gonna love PPA for all kinds of paper crafting. And in fact, I've got a video coming down the line with PPA as well as other basics as well. So now that I've got a whole bunch of it on here, I'm just going to spread it all over. Now this is going to do a couple of things. It's going to seal in any of those colors that I used that were not permanent. The only place I'm not going to put it, guys, I'm going to try and keep it and watch. I put a big old blob right next to it. I'm going to try to keep the PPA away from my cord just because I don't want to accidentally put that on there. Okay, that's pretty good. And just get it all the way over so that it's totally coating this. Now here's the part where I've not done this. All this is going to do is this seals in the color. Okay, so all the colors underneath, they're now sealed, they're now set. Now if you had some watercolors or something really highly reactive, I would not have swirled it all around in that way because I had acrylic paint and other stuff for the most part as like my top layer on here. I wasn't concerned. So here's what I'm going to try, and I don't know if it'll work or not, but we're gonna give it a go. Brusho, okay, so watercolor effects, crystal little powders, a lot of fun to play with. I believe because Brusho is reactive with water, I believe it'll react with the PPA, but it gets better because if the Brusho reacts with the PPA and then dries in the PPA, what I believe will happen is it will be set. Instead of me having to worry about, you know, is it set? Is it gonna bleed? Is it gonna do bad things to my project? I believe that this will just make it set so that we'll be just good to go. And that would be great if I don't have to worry about, oh, if I get any water on this, it's gonna make a mess. If that's the case, that would be wonderful. So you don't need a lot. It's just like a little sprinkling, almost like we had salt or something. It is reacting. You can see, and I'm going to bring you way in here so you can see as it's taking a little longer than it might normally, but it is reacting. So if I wanted to, and I'm going to see here, if I add a little water on top, it's going to increase like the bleeding of that color. Okay. And then I'm going to need to just let that set. I'm going to need to let that continue to blend and react. Although if I wanted to get more blending going, I could do what I'm doing down here, which is certainly one way to go. But if you wanted it blended out, I'm going to go ahead and do this because I don't mind if this bottom corner is looking a little funky there. But you see what happens. And I'm sorry, I had you guys zoomed all the way in here. Sorry about that. You can see what happens here if you're blending it all, and I'll do it over here as well. It's going to become a fully blended color instead of like blob type looking. Not a wrong, not a right, but it's a lot of fun. So the impossible is often the untried, and I'm gonna put that. That seems like a perfect quote because I have the PPA down here. That is a sealant, it is an adhesive. I could glue anything I want now into this. And in fact, I think I'll grab a couple little, I see a couple little buttons right off here to the side. And I'm thinking I don't know if I want to, actually that's a little big. If I had a smaller one, I'd go with, oh, there we go. Here's a little pearl. I'll put a tiny little pearl in here. Okay, because that's PPA down there, that means it's adhesive, which means all of this stuff will stick, which I think is just the best because it means I don't have to add anything else. Anything I want to pop onto here is simply gonna stick. Isn't that great? If I wanted to though, if I was thinking, oh yeah, but May, you know, you've got a lot going on here, I could just throw some PPA kind of on top of and then use my finger or a paintbrush to kind of put around the buttons, just enough so that I see it going, little tool here, little scraper tool here, so that I see it kind of sealing around those buttons. That would certainly work as well. But this has been a lot of fun. And I'm loving what I'm seeing here. And actually, I'm loving this like swirly so much. I want to try it with my palette knife. Don't be afraid to give the cover a go. Don't be worried about if you ruin the cover. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It's just a fun place to, so I'm just kind of going back and forth with the palette knife here to like spread and blend those colors more. And I will definitely test and leave a note there on YouTube when this is dry, if everything's sealed in and stayed water resistant. In other words, that didn't make it like blend and bleed and all that. Well, that's most interesting. I gotta tell you, I am liking that quite a bit because I'm still seeing, now I'm kind of scraping it off a little, which is fascinating to me because it's scraping off some of where the stenciling is, and that's pretty darn interesting. All right guys, well that's it from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed this art drawing video. I'm gonna get back to work once this is dry in my journal. I'll see you next time.